Right, it's 15:30 on the dot, and the OECD has a great reputation for timekeeping, so I think we're going to start on time. We're going to try and end on time as well. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the panel we've got for you this afternoon on the urban age. Huge subject, and we've got an excellent series of speakers, experts, and elected mayors from across the world. By way of introduction, I'm just going to ask you first to put your mobile phones onto silent or vibrate, please, so that it doesn't interrupt the discussion. I'm Sophie Pedder, I'm the Paris Bureau Chief for The Economist, and it's my great pleasure to welcome you this afternoon to the panel debate. We are going to be discussing the urban age, a time when more than half the world's population lives in cities. By 2100, the share of the world's population living in urban areas is expected to reach around 9 billion, which is close to about 85% of the total world's population. Cities are growing for good reasons. They offer a strong economy, better quality of life, great centers of creativity and innovation, less bureaucratic and possibly more flexible as structures of governance than national governments sometimes can be. And the arrival of technology that enables cities to become smart cities exemplifies this sort of innovation and gives cities all sorts of opportunities to take advantage of new technology by integrating cloud-based systems, smartphones, networks, and sensors in order to profit from the internet and from mass data collection and analysis. Cities are also at the forefront of tackling climate change, and that's a huge subject that is going to be very dominant in France at the end of this year, already is. Urban policies can contribute to global greenhouse gas mitigation and reduce the overall cost of emissions through lifestyle, transportation, and energy choices that are often made at the level of cities. However, cities often also highlight the negative side of urbanization and create huge challenges for city mayors and for policymakers as they try to provide basic services for huge numbers of migrants and those living in urban areas. So we have an agenda which includes not only climate change, innovation, management of cities, but also the questions of inclusivity and social mixing. In order to discuss these subjects, we have 3 elected mayors and 1 expert on the subject. On my left, on your right, we have Tri Risma Harini, who's the very first female mayor from Surabaya in Indonesia. We're hugely pleased to have you here. Surabaya is Indonesia's 2nd largest city, and before being elected as mayor, she served as a government employee at the Surabaya city government for more than 20 years. So she has a huge wealth of experience in city management, was the first to implement an e-procurement system in Indonesia. She has been the forefront of creating green cities, how to introduce environmental policies in cities and do so in a way that is both consultative and economically viable. On her left, or her right, on my left, Mayor Adriana Krnčová, I hope I've pronounced that right, Mayor of Prague in the Czech Republic. Mayor Krnčová, sorry, I'm terribly sorry about the pronunciation. I did try and pronounce this earlier, and she told me to call her Adriana, so I think I will. She's been elected mayor in 2014. Before that, she served as Deputy Interior Minister for Public Administration. She has a background also in Transparency International in the Czech Republic, so a background for a long time as Executive Director running the anti-corruption organization, and before that a career in the private sector. So she brings a wealth of different sorts of experience to the question of running cities. Next we have great pleasure of introducing our guest speaker as well, who's going to introduce the subject this afternoon. And that's Ahmed Abdoutaleb, who's Mayor of Rotterdam in the Netherlands. Ahmed Abdoutaleb was actually born in Morocco, came to the Netherlands at the age of 15, I think, and started off in the same field as myself, that's to say, as a reporter in the media before going on into press and public relations, and then joining the municipality of Amsterdam, where he was appointed as alderman back in 2004. In February 2007, Mr. Abdoutaleb was appointed State Secretary for Social Affairs and Employment in the government of the Netherlands and was elected Mayor of Rotterdam in January 2009. So we're very pleased to welcome all three of our elected mayors here this afternoon. Finally, last but not least, as we say, Rolt Alter is the expert from the OECD on public governance and territorial development. He was previously Chief of Staff of the OECD Secretary General, Mr. Goria, and before joining the OECD was an economist at the IMF, and before that at the German Ministry of the Economy in Bonn, when it was in Bonn. In the last century. So we have one expert, three mayors, all from very different backgrounds with very different challenges in front of them and some really creative solutions to talk about. So I'm going to start by asking Mayor Abdoutaleb to come and give us an 8-minute or so presentation to introduce the question of the urban age and the challenges it presents to mayors today. Thank you.
Mesdames et messieurs, bonjour. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for inviting me. Assalamu alaikum for our mayor from Indonesia. It's a great honor to be invited here to speak for you. And it's, I think, an initial remark I would like to make that we have two mayors here, female mayors, one from Asia, one from Europe. This great city of Paris is under leadership of a female mayor. And the other one is going to take over in Barcelona very soon. And I'm an immigrant, so women and immigrants are taking over. Congratulations, I think. I don't know whether you know her name, but Professor Saskia Sassen, Bruce Katz, and Benjamin Barber all write about the growing importance of metropolitan regions and cities in the global context. More than half of the world population indeed now lives in cities, more in the cities close to coasts than elsewhere, but we're talking about great numbers. And by the year 2100, we are expecting that 85% of the world population will live in cities. So cities are growing. Can you imagine what does that mean? The world population is growing towards 9 billion, and 85% of it lives in cities. What does that mean for cities? For managing the city? What does that mean for getting enough food in the city? What does it mean for getting enough energy in the city? What do you think about collecting garbage? What do you think about education? Think about the moments people in India will start eating 3 meals a day. The average is now about 1.5 meals a day. How much millions of tons of food every year, maybe every day, is needed to cope with this challenge? We have a wonderful relation from Rotterdam with the city of Shanghai. And 2 years ago, when I met the former mayor and asked him, what is your biggest challenge? You may think it's a communist country, so maybe freedom of expression or rioting or whatever. That was not his biggest challenge. His biggest challenge was, how can I get enough food to feed 20 million people every day? As a result of these demographic changes, and cities, whether you like it or not, are serving as big magnets in our societies, things will change. And then the issue of governance will be there. And I'm happy that the OECD is also debating that issue. There will be a major shift of responsibilities from what we call states or nation states or governments towards cities. And the borders of cities will change. The legitimate border of cities will not be the right ones to deal with the new challenges in the future. Quite an issue for local governments and for city managers. It's important that we always stay a step ahead in thinking about that kind of future. This is a suit designed in the city of Rotterdam a couple of months ago. It's shaped in the city of Rotterdam and it's made in Turkey. It's made in Turkey. Within 5 years, this suit will be designed in Rotterdam and will be printed in Rotterdam. I'm not joking, and I'm not only using the word printed, will be printed in Rotterdam. What does that mean for the clothing industry in Bangladesh? What does that mean for textile industry in Pakistan or India? What does that mean for all that cargo that are coming from the east in containers towards Europe? What does that mean for Singapore? It produces nothing, but it's the biggest logistical hub in the world if there are no containers to transship from one vessel to the other. We are talking about the third industrial revolution. We started with steam as the first revolution, and there was electricity as a second revolution with steel together, and now we're talking about the third industrial revolution. The major things will be printed locally and consumed locally, unless we're talking about food. That's another exception. What does that mean for my city? The inner circle of it is 620,000 citizens. It's consuming energy. I doubt whether my city will consume energy in 20 years' time. I dare to say that my city will deliver energy in 20 years' time. We now are imposing taxes on our citizens to collect garbage. We say to them, you pay 170 euros a year, we collect your garbage. Within 10 years, citizens will ask me money. They will ask me to pay them to allow me to collect the garbage. Garbage will be part of the circular economy. Garbage is not already money and will consider to be more money in the future. What does that mean for the role of national governments? My city is good for 60 billion contribution to the Dutch GDP, which is about 700 billion. So it's about 10% more or less is generated in my city. And we proudly give that money to the national government. They redistribute it the way the democracy is doing that. And then I go at the end of the year to my Minister of Finance and say, please give me something back of it for the city of Rotterdam. Do you really think that that will going to happen within 10, 15 years? I doubt that. What is the level to manage education? Is the nation state or the mayor of Shanghai is the best level to deal with education? Who knows really exactly here in Paris what is going to happen in the smallest village surrounding the city of Bordeaux? Or maybe the mayor of Bordeaux and his local democracy is the best level to manage education and healthcare and public transport in the region. Major issues are on the table. And I think for us in Europe, not only the national governments will be forced by growing cities and the democracies in cities to rethink their position, but also the European Union. There's no doubt about that. That the philosophy of nowadays from the European Union of dealing with regions will move towards dealing with urban entities. And I'm sure about that. We have to do that in the future. And then how do we manage our cities? Is the civil servant and the mayor and the city council the best layer to take decisions, or are the citizens the best one to have the best ideas to manage their own neighborhoods? I'm conducting an experiment to go to one neighborhood in the city of Rotterdam. If people from Rotterdam, I will tell what it is, that's Midland, and tell them I have 9 million euros to reshape this neighborhood. And I am asking you citizens in this neighborhood to come up with a plan. You design a plan. And you have the right to elect your chairman, your chairperson, to deliberate and to make your own choices. And there is one border. You will not exceed the border of 9 million euros. And you have to come up with a plan in November this year. I call it a co-creation process with citizens. And I know from the very beginning, they will have the right ideas, the right plans, the best solutions for their own neighborhood that will be cheap, and they will realize it in time. And I think that is another way of thinking about shaping our cities. And finally, our cities will become global cities with a lot of nationalities and languages. The city of Rotterdam is a city of 174 nationalities. The United Nations is more than 200. So I call myself, by accident sometimes, a small Ban Ki-moon. So I have to deal with the major issue in my city, which is peacekeeping among all these cultures, colors, religions. And it's really important to keep stability by providing a climate of equal opportunities and creating access of equal access for all citizens to what we call scarce products of society. That is housing, that is education, and that is labor market. If we not succeed in creating equal access to these products, there will be instability with probably riots at the end. And that is a signal of instability in society. And I think it's really important to work together on these issues to create a better environment in the future. So let me conclude by saying the nature of a city will change. The city will become more important than maybe the nation states. And the role of local governments will be more important in shaping cities, in providing services and creating the economy for their own citizens. I never forget my former colleague of Toronto, David Miller. He was a great chairman of the C40, the 40 cities working together in the field of climate. And it was, I think, 2010, just 1 year mayor of Rotterdam, and we had a meeting in Scandinavia. And there we have had a big meeting of national leaders come in there in a new attempt to reach an international agreement on climate. And don't forget, very soon we will have a 21st round again, a new attempt to reach an international agreement, which in my opinion will not work. And then David Miller was there to say, let the world leaders talk and mayors act. Thank you.
That was a really excellent introduction, very thought-provoking and plenty of subject matter there for discussion. Before we go on, and I will ask the first question to our other panelists and then we'll begin the debate, I need to introduce you to something called the WeSembly. Now this is our sort of interactive element to the debate, and anyone who wants to take part in this is very welcome to do so, encouraged to do so, but you need first of all to connect to the OECD hotspot on your smartphone. And in order to do that, you need to go to the website, which is app.wesembly.com, and use the keyword OECD Pink to access the interactive platform. So anyone who would like to do that, you can answer questions, you can post messages, ask questions, sorry, you can post messages, and you can answer a poll, which I'm going to ask you in a minute before our panel begins. So do please make use of that if you'd like. Anyone who wants to comment on Twitter is welcome to do it with the hashtag OECDPink again, for obvious reasons, and I'm not sure if it's anything to do with the fact that women are dominating on our panel, the colour of the room. And if anybody doesn't have a smartphone, and please don't be embarrassed about it, you can ask your question by SMS, and you have a flyer on your chair, apparently, which tells you how to do this. So don't hesitate to ask your questions. I'll be looking at them on the tablet later on, and I'll put them to the mayors concerned or our expert panelists if you would like me to ask any questions. So don't hesitate to do that. I think what we'll do is first ask you that one question, and the question is the following, and you may answer it on your on the WeSembly platform. Are smart cities the way of the future? Okay, you can answer that question at any time you like, or actually I think you have to do it fairly quickly. But we'll be looking at the answer. The answer 1 is yes. If you think no, you must press 2. So we'll see the result of that poll as the discussion goes on. Right, that out of the way, let's get fast to our panelists. And we're going to move, I think, to Prague, because the question of smart cities is something that is clearly a huge issue at the moment and a huge potential, but in particular difficulties, it seems to me, are presented for those of us in Europe who are dealing with very old cities that were not constructed with any form of modern technology in mind. How do we in Europe deal with integrating new technologies and all the opportunities those present with the infrastructure of old Europe? Mayor of Prague.
It's the question for me.
The question's for you.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm very pleased to be here. As you know, I'm from Prague and I'm also an immigrant and a woman. And I'm not a big talker, and in terms of political talks, I was often criticized that I'm not talking to politicians, to colleagues. I'm rather doing the things. So I'm very pleased to be here to talk about things which I like to do and which I will like to do. And hopefully with the help of my colleagues in Prague. I'm seeing here the head of the Association for SMEs, Mr. Havlicek, so he's the right man on the place, and I will more than happy to work with him, especially on the topic of smart cities, yes. And I was sitting on the plane and I was thinking what the definition of smart cities is. So I come up with a definition, I will read it because in the meantime I forgot it. It's time and resource saving process that enables the city management decrease OPEXs and increase services for citizens. I think this is my definition of smart cities, and honestly, when I came to I was elected, it was last year, as it was mentioned, I got a paper, it was written that we have a project on smart cities, and I tried to figure out what it is. Nobody could tell me at the first meeting what is the goal of this project. So, and therefore we created our own goals, because we sat together with some universities, and we have 9 universities in Prague. We signed a memorandum with the Technical University, with the Charles University, in order to figure out what would help Prague the best. As you mentioned, it's a historical city. Who, by the way, was in Prague already? Raise your hands. Not that much. Yeah, okay. It can be still better. And you're right. It's a mainly historical city. The major challenges we have, it's in traffic and transportation. Maybe some of you already heard about this famous tunnel we have, still not open, but we will, I promise. It's the Tunnel Blanca, which is under construction already for 10 years. It's cost us a fortune. But honestly, I really deeply hope that it will enable to make the traffic a little bit more smoother through Prague. This is our major challenge. So coming back to the smart cities, this is one topic we want to utilize university knowledge and knowledge in general to help us to regulate transportation better. But besides that, we plan to create sort of a investment fund. It's not an investment fund, it's a smart fund, something like that, where we would give some money into this fund, and new SMEs and smart SMEs could actually apply for getting some money for this fund. The only maybe condition is these SMEs or these smart companies has to work together with universities. So we are going to enable to maybe be a little bit more smarter. We are in order of being more smarter, we are as the city hall and the magistrate, we are opening open data to enable for everybody who wants to create some smart applications to do so. And this is just the beginning. So as I said, we are on the beginning of definition what will be at the end, or what could be at the end of the project. And I'm very happy that we have some very clever heads in this project included already. So it's still open. Everybody is welcome, even you.
Thank you very much. We'll come back to the question of smart cities in a moment, but I'm just going to let, first of all our panelists have a word. So we're going to move to Surabaya and ask the mayor there. I think what we'd most like to hear from you at this point early on is about what you've done to create a greener city, transformation of Surabaya. And in particular, I would like to know how this is possible in an economically viable way. Thank you.
Sorry, because my English is not too good, so I try to explain to Indonesia, but my staff will be translate into English. Surabaya is kurang lebih dengan penduduk 3,2 miliar.
We have around 3.2 million people inhabitants
Luasnya kurang lebih 378
with 382 kilometers square.
Sebagian besar adalah perumahannya adalah merupakan
Most of Surabaya area is
horizontal development.
kampung area, in a residential area horizontally.
Karena itu yang harus saya lakukan, dan dulu terkenal Surabaya adalah kota yang jorok, kotor.
Surabaya was known as a very dirty, hot city.
Karena itu saya mencoba
That's why
merubah
we are
bagaimana
trying to change
mengajak warga
to make
Surabaya untuk
Surabaya community appreciate the green and cleanliness of the city and very beautiful city. The first one that we change is how to transform the residential area to be more clean and more beautiful.
Warga di perkampungan kami juga mengelola sampah.
The citizens in our residential area in Kampung,
mengelola limbah
they manage their own wastewater management systems. They have their own waste management system as well, because we have limited resources in the Surabaya city government.
bekerja sama dengan seluruh stakeholder yang ada di
That's why we work together with all the stakeholders in Surabaya city
untuk bagaimana dengan anggaran yang
with the limited resources so we can work maximum.
Yang kami lakukan adalah
What we did actually, how to change the mindset of the community of our programs to make a green city.
Selanjutnya adalah setelah itu kita bisa lihat
That's why we can see
ini adalah warga
the
Surabaya yang
data
mengelola sampah.
that we have.
Kita lihat data jumlah penduduk
From the
Surabaya,
graphic, the number of the citizens is increasing every year, but the comparison, if you can see the comparison, the number of the waste that goes to the landfill is decreasing every year.
kemudian jumlah penyakit
And also the
juga
number of
menurun.
diseases every year is also decreasing.
Kemudian setelah itu saya mengajak masyarakat
I also try to
bagaimana,
take the
mereka,
community to
eh,
have
melakukan peningkatan
an improvement of their economic income.
kami membuat
That's why we have these
kelompok ibu-ibu
small medium enterprises for the housewives so that they can work together in,
dan hasilnya saat ini kurang lebih
as you can see from the picture, we have
ibu-ibu
150,000 group for small medium enterprises for the housewives.
dan selanjutnya akhirnya karena mengembang besar maka
As it's
usaha-usaha
developed,
itu
the
tadi,
program we also
menjadi
have
usaha
a
yang,
flagship
di
kampung.
seluruh kampung.
It's existing in all residential area.
Kemudian setelah itu kami meningkatkan pendidikan masyarakat.
Another thing that we appreciate is to increase the education by having all the libraries in the residential area. We have around 978 libraries around the residential area in Surabaya.
Kemudian kami membuat taman-taman
We also
dan
develop public parks
lapangan di sekitar,
and also
di sekitar,
sports
kawasan
fields
perumahannya.
in all residential area in Surabaya.
Kami juga bekerja sama dengan beberapa kota yang
We also work together with other cities that we have a sister city relationship.
kami membuat depo sampah, depo
Like this example where we have the waste composting center.
Kemudian kami kenapa kemudian masyarakat percaya
Why
dengan pemerintah
this
kota?
community actually believe and working together with the Surabaya city government, because we have a transparent system. We have all electronic application for all of our public services. All schools, if they need all the office buildings and also of all our parks, all of our libraries, all of our health center, equipped with free Wi-Fi facilities. And when the community access it through our online system, it decreases the corruption gap. and the community can also
mendapatkan akses
can
layanan
get
lebih baik
benefit
karena
from
kami
the
bisa
online
menghemat
services,
keuangan
and we
yang
also
besar
can
sekali.
save our resources.
Dan masyarakat juga tidak
And
butuh
the community
transportasi
doesn't
untuk
need to
layanan.
commute to the other place to access the
Ini
services.
adalah contoh layanan
This is one of the example, as you
yang
can see
bisa
from the
diakses
picture,
di
where the
setiap,
community can just go
kawasan
to their
lingkungan
district
perumahannya.
in the residential area.
Kemudian selanjutnya kami mengelola ini adalah taman.
We also
Ini adalah
transform
bekas
several
sampah
area. For example, this is
dari,
a
tempat pembuangan sampah.
landfill area, and we transform it into public parks. It's 60 hectare.
Kemudian ini adalah taman-taman kota yang
I'll show you
digunakan.
another also for public parks in Surabaya.
Kemudian kami juga mengelola kawasan pantai.
We also preserve the coastal area
Karena
by
kami
planting
harus
mangrove,
melindungi kawasan kami
because Surabaya is located in coastal
naiknya
area
permukaan air laut.
because of the rise of the seawater level.
Kami juga membangun waduk-waduk
We
yang
also
kita
built
gunakan untuk
dams, several dams
menampung,
that we
air
use
hujan,
to
di
hold
mana
the
saat ini
rainwater,
air hujan semakin tinggi,
because the
kurang
level
hujan.
of the rainwater is increasing.
Kami membuat program
We
besar,
also have this program, ESCO School,
Eco Campus,
and also Eco Campus,
dan Green Building.
and also Green Building.
Saat ini kami sedang menyiapkan untuk transportasi massal
Right now we are preparing for the transportation, for tram, for the north and south, and monorail for the west and
kami juga
east.
menyiapkan jalur sepeda
And we also have bike track in Surabaya.
dan juga perbaikan
We're also
pedestrian.
improving the condition for the sidewalk for pedestrian.
Kami merubah beberapa SPB
We transformed several of gas station into public parks in Surabaya that located in the middle of the city. There are around 14 gas stations that we transform into public parks.
Kami membuat program-program di mana pada hari Minggu
We also have this program
kawasan
in
kita
Sunday
tutup
when we have this car-free day, and we close the road so that the kids and the community can play together.
konsep kami adalah
Our concept is
kota ini semakin
this
besar, tapi
city can be a very comfortable city for everyone that live in Surabaya.
kami juga mengelola
We also
kawasan sungai.
have
Ini
this.
sama dengan proyeknya.
Thank you. Do you want to just finish up? Because I think we'd like to come back with some questions, but do just finish perhaps quickly, and then we'll come back to him more later.
Ini adalah kawasan Kalimas.
This is I would like to show you the Kalimas River. This is the past situation,
Sekarang ini
and we already transform it with our revitalization program. And this is the condition right now, as you can see from the picture. We transform it into public parks.
Thank you very much indeed. It's very inspirational. Thank you. I think this is the perfect moment to turn to Rolf Altair and ask about all these questions about the level of government and the sort of decision making that can best be taken at the city level. What does best practice teach us about the sort of governance and the level of government that is best adapted to these sorts of decisions? Is cities the way to go? Is that where main decisions are going to be made in the next 10, 20 years? Or are these just three exceptional mayors that we've got in front of us?
Thank you very much, Sophie. I have to say, there's no question. You have three very exceptional mayors in front of you. That's for sure. True is that when you hear what happens today in cities, but in particular what it takes to develop the potential of cities, the OECD would have a view that says take policies at the right scale. So it's not an answer central government or the cities. It's about the question how to organize responsibilities, and in particular how you make sure that there is coherence and coordination. And I give you a very straightforward example, the OECD being an economic institution. We have looked at what happens to public investment. The Secretary General here this morning said it is not by accident that the key issue is investment, investment, investment. And one part of it is public investment. Where is it decided? Who finances it? and who is responsible for implementation. And not necessarily that had to be all at the same level. Why not? If you think about investment in infrastructure, it would make sense to think about where transportation lines go through a country. It would make sense yet you think about where broadband would be available. These are discussions that should take place in coordination between mayors and ministers, and they would come up with a plan for the country. So we're making, in some ways, an important case for national urban policies, but at the same time, and much of our work shows that, we would be very supportive of great decision making at the local level. And let me finish. You said by the end of this century, 85% of people will be living in cities. But they will not all be living in large cities. They will be living in cities. And not all the cities would have the capacity, the resources, I would say even the ambition to become a large city. So therefore, the response should not be one size fits all. It had to do with what type of cities we're talking about, what role they would play, and I'm sure what the citizens would like it to be.
Thank you very much. Lots of questions there. I think we'll just treat one sort of subject at a time, and anybody who feels they want to come in and talk on this, please put yourself forward. I think let's start with smart cities, because I think as citizens, a lot of us feel both excited by the idea that there could be all this data being collected and therefore cities administered more efficiently and peaks flattened, as the jargon has it, in order to manage things like energy or transport more efficiently. But it's also rather scary, the idea that on every corner, every single thing that we ever do is going to be monitored, data collected, and somebody's going to be crunching it in some sort of horrible control tower. What is the implication of smart cities, and for what are both the potentials but also the misgivings that some citizens might have about Big Brother watching us all? Who would like to have a go at that?
From my experience with citizens, I think the remark of my neighbor concerning the right level for the right decision is the right remark. My experience in being in a neighborhood in Rotterdam once in 2 weeks, so I really have the idea to know what is among my citizens, is that a lot of people are worried about the 200 square meters surrounding their own house. It's the garden, it's the car, it's the school of the kids, it's the playground, the garden, the green area. That is what they can oversee. But the issue is, if you take all these concerns of 200 square meters on the level of the city, you will have an idea of the concern of the whole city. And, you know, I'm really happy with this city that I'm running to have one of the biggest ports in the world, the biggest in the West. Why do we have the biggest port in the West? And we used to be the biggest in the world, because somewhere, a very long time ago, there was a man who said we have to connect this small fisherman's village with the North Sea to bridge a distance of 40 kilometers. The port of the city was not a seaport, it was a river port. So I call that not a man with a vision, that was a man who I call was visionary. And you may elaborate whether there's a difference in that, having a vision and being visionary. To me, they are two different things. That was the man who really gave the city a future. And that was not a man necessarily coming from the government. That was an engineer living in the city. So at that time, the best idea was not coming from the bureaucracy, was not coming from the government, was coming from the society. And that's why I'm personally really am keen on listening to these ideas of citizens to make the best out of it. They have really the best ideas you can imagine. So I do not expect from all my citizens to be visionary, but the least they can expect from me is to collect all these ideas, the 200 meters ideas, I call them, on the level of the city, to see on the scale of the city what really need to be done in the near future. And sure, I have one of the biggest petrochemical sites in the world. Houston is the first one, and we have the second largest petrochemical sites of the world. We produce a lot of pollution. We produce a lot of heat, water, that we just dump into the river, and hot water is energy. That's why we now have a plan, it's more than a plan, to reuse the heat coming from the port to heat 45,000 houses in Rotterdam, and to bring that heat, this is a distance of 60 kilometers, to bring it to the farmers who need heat in the winter, but also to heat other houses in The Hague and Leiden. A project that will now apply to the Juncker plan to get part of the finances from Brussels to get it done within the near future. And by doing that, we will curb the whole problem of the Netherlands when it comes to CO2 emissions. It's a plan coming from a city, not from the nation. See the statement of David Miller. Leaders talk, cities act.
Thank you. I'd still like to pursue this question of smart cities there, and perhaps I can ask Adriana to talk about this. Is there a sense in which smart cities is just a sort of buzzword that's out there, or is it something that can really be put into practice and be done so in a viable way? Because it requires a lot of investment. There's a lot of technology involved. Is this something that really will transform the way our cities are managed?
Could be. Depends on the city at what level they are in developing this idea. But I want to come back to your input on who should finance what at the state level, because I mean I fully agree. You said that in the cities, not only the city should finance everything, they should collaborate with the state. Prague is a very good example when. Actually, Prague so far financed all infrastructure projects by themselves, and this is not the way how we want to proceed. At the moment we have 1.6 billion crowns debt. We still have a AAA plus rating. That's okay, but still we don't want to proceed in this self-financing infrastructure. Therefore, I mean we discussing now with the government how. Could the government help us, or how should we collaborate with them? Because I have the advantage to had worked for the government at the ministry level, and now I'm working for the city. That's a huge difference. It's an unbelievable difference. Just imagine if you work at the ministry, you are working on a huge corporation on the top, and you really don't see what's happening at the bottom. And if you manage a city, it's really on the bottom, because you have to make daily decisions, maybe 20, 30 decisions every day, and they are crucial for the life of the people living in the city. This is the huge difference. I don't want to overestimate our, let's say, meaning, yeah. But mostly the ministries actually can't estimate the decisions they are making. They are sometimes coming into power maybe in 5 years and dramatically influence the life also in the cities. Not to talk about the tax distribution. This is a crucial issue for Czech Republic as well, especially for Prague. The state owes us 1.4 billion crowns. And fact is that I'm going maybe to collect it. I don't know how I'm going to do it. Yeah, I don't know how I'm going to do it, but I have to be very smart.
A different form of being a smart city.
And because Prague is contributing with 30% into the GDP, so I think we deserve a little bit help from the state in managing the city. So far, we didn't get very much out of it, but we will.
Let me ask you the same question then, coming back to the smart cities, the question of data collection. You've done a huge amount on e-government at the city level in Surabaya. What are the implications for the civil liberties of people who feel that they are, has it actually been an improvement that's worth the price you have to pay sometimes in terms of being followed?
Dengan menggunakan
By using this
sistem
e-government,
sistem elektronik. Yang pertama adalah
first of all, the benefit that we get is transparency. And second of all, we can also save the resources, we can save money, because we can actually decrease the number of our employee, and we can use that money for the public service. And the community will be learn how to use an easier public services by accessing online system, and they don't need to come by themselves to the office, and we can also reduce the transportation. Right now we can actually prove, when I become the mayor, there are 163 districts, and we actually decrease it, and right now we only have 154 districts. And we can save money for the payroll for those employees, and we use that money back for the public service. And we improve the education by giving a free education, starting from early childhood education until high school, and all health service also free. And also for elderly, we also provide services for them. We provide meals for them, free meals for the elderly that doesn't have enough money. The process in the school for admission, they can also use the online system. They only need to access the internet. They don't need to go to the school directly. To admission, they can actually access their report of their learning also from the internet. The parents can access it online for all admission, and also for this, for the permit for business, they can also use it online, so it will be cheap and very easy. And to pay the tax, they can also do it online, so the community will see the transparency of our system, and they can see how much money actually that we get and how much money that we use for the development of the city. And the community can also make a complaint, because we have a 24 hours media center, and they can use Twitter, Facebook, email, and we have a response in 24 hours.
Thank you very much. Is that, Rolf, the real lesson of the use of data in managing cities, that it's a sort of empowerment tool as much as it's an efficiency tool?
Well, to be honest, Sophia, I think striving for e-government is everywhere, at every level. Every country would like to make sure that public services are delivered with great efficiency. And of course, data play an important role. If you look at open data, which we want to throw out to business and private sector people to make sure that they find new opportunities, it's a deliberate policy. But it's also, I think, an enormous pressure to use these data within government to make better policies. But it's a wonderful example where national and city interests probably merge. Because it also says, wouldn't it be worthwhile to have a regulation that sets out the limits and the options of the use and collection of data at the national level, rather than have one that applies, if I may say so, to Rotterdam, and the other law applies to Amsterdam. So there is a lot of joint work to be done, but I think in the search for efficient solutions, I'm convinced that the input of citizens at the city level can make a very big difference, because they actually receive education, health, social services directly from people at the local level. So they would ask for the right things to deliver differently. I am convinced.
Mayor Abu Talib.
Deeper, I'm an engineer by profession, and I can tell you from what I know in my domain that enough data, enriching data, and data analysis does not necessarily make a nation or a city smart. I was joking when you asked to your neighbor when is the city smart? I said when the city has an IQ of 140. Um, that's, of course, not what I would like to apply when it comes to a city. But at the end, a city is smart when it combines all the talents of a city, old ones, new ones, traditions, but also revolutionary ideas and techniques and technologies and perceptions to do two things: to generate jobs and to increase wealth, and to do that in a sustainable manner. That are, to me, the characters. At the end, if you are looking at the black box, what we call smart city, at the end, the outcome of it should be jobs, wealth, and sustainability. And then go back in thinking about how should that process need to be established in a way to get that outcome. Again, this is an engineering thing, but I think it's really important to think it that way. The inner city of Prague, but also the inner city of New York, was designed for a car driven by horses. Does that necessarily mean that's not a good city? Well, this makes inner cities very attractive for tourism and all the other things. So cities tend to cultivate that. My colleague mayor of Amsterdam owns such a beautiful city with canals and everything. Millions of visitors are coming to the city. Nowadays, the citizens in Amsterdam are a little bit complaining about the garbage all these tourists leaving behind. So there is, I think, somewhere a limit in this domain. But the issue is how to make all these things work in a way that we create enough jobs, wealth, and do that in a sustainable manner. And once the cities have succeeded in doing that, will be really leading in being a smart city. I was talking about 3D printing, and I was talking about printing my suit. What do you think about printing a car? What do you think about printing a bicycle? You are home, you design your own bicycle, you put it on a high-speed highway connection with the company that makes bicycles northern part of the Netherlands. You negotiate a price, and they tell you that you may come within 2 days to pick up your bicycle. Has nothing to do with making such a bicycle somewhere in China. And the marginal costs of that process is zero, because labor is zero, and whether this 3D printing machine is in northern Netherlands or in China, it doesn't matter. You eliminate the whole cargo issues, the transport, and the pollution connected with the transport, etc. This is not a dream. This is reality. I have seen the first machine to print metal. The very beginning, where we have been printing plastics. Nowadays, we're so far to print metal products. And so the way we connect sciences, universities with small producers and the new investors, people that want to put the money in these systems, we create the new economy with the Internet of Things. That's why we are working together in Rotterdam with Professor Rifkin, who is also advisor to the German government and the Chinese, to move towards what we call the heart of the third industrial revolution by doing these things. And really, I think the aim of all cities should be being a smart city with an IQ of 140.
Thank you very much for that. Is that, Adriana, what the real challenge of smart cities is? Is it a question of becoming, every city wants to be, the next Silicon Valley or the next center of high-tech innovation? Is that what we've got to put at the focus of city policy? Is that really what cities are about?
I don't know. I'm thank you for comparing us to New York, but you forget the legacy of 40 years of communism, which had a very bad implication on Prague and its transportation. Yeah, so we have to struggle with that at the moment. And of course, it was built sometimes, long time ago, where horses were mainly on the road, but now we have quite a heavy traffic. So this is what we are struggling with. But coming back to your question, yeah, well, as I said, it depends on the level of the cities, how they are developed. at what they really want to become and what they really can become, are able to become, structure-wise, I mean, knowledge-wise, and depends on what is their strategy. I can imagine, maybe, and I'm not only because I'm a very big lover of science fiction, but also because I really deeply believe that Prague and surroundings could be a new Silicon Valley if we really put an effort on it. And I really believe that Prague has all the possibilities or the capacities and the chances to become a new European Silicon Valley. However, of course, there are some obstacles we have to overcome, but I mean, this is only the question of our energy and passion. And when I was elected to the office, and in Czech language, actually the mayor, it's called starosta, and it comes from the language. The meaning is, and I thought the meaning is starosta. It means to take care. Yeah, but then a colleague told me that it's a big mistake. It's coming from the word stari. It means old. So just to end up this sentence is why I'm talking about is that I don't consider myself as old, and it's why I have quite a lot of time to make it true what I really want to do with our colleagues to really make Prague a new and a smart city, not only a medieval city with tourists coming to admire the heritage from medieval, but also because they will find opportunities to grow, to establish companies, and to find the support of the city to do so.
Let's talk a bit about climate change and greening the city. We've seen some fantastic examples and visual ones of what's happened in Surabaya. But Rolf, let me just ask you first, what's the sort of best practice thinking there about the role of cities in doing this? How is it possible to balance the needs of industry, whether it's the industry of tomorrow, 3D printing of bicycles, or the industry that exists and is a reality for most of the cities around the world today, the needs of industry and the needs for well-being of the citizen in the city? What's the sort of articulation between those different factors on greening the city?
Well, let me say, not surprisingly, cities are part of the problem, if you like, but they're also part of the solution. And I think that's a very important starting point to think about what are the options. Let me say, when you talk about smart cities, yes, maybe sort of the first idea is about technology in a broader sense. But smart is also the combination of people and technology. And it is about the combination of people and technology and opportunity. So people who live in cities may, and the numbers show it, they are responsible, obviously, for a very large part of greenhouse emissions. No surprise. But at the same time, they could also be, and some cities are already, part of the solution, because you reach a lot of people because of the density of cities that will help reduce these emissions. Two of the most important sources of improvement are changes in traffic, meaning intelligent, if you like, smart ways of transportation. And the second is how you heat or cool buildings. How can you combine that? Yes, you can do a lot for growing because you will invest into intelligent, smart ways of transportation. You reduce at the same time emissions. You can build houses today when you are not only an old city, you build houses. But you could also say a lot of it comes out of retrofitting. And I am sure there are many more opportunities. So it is an issue not as an either or, it is one through the other, that cities will become and are already part of the solution. Therefore, when the mayor speaks about the initiatives that they undertake in Rotterdam under his leadership, that's the way that should not only apply in Rotterdam. And I'm sure a good experience there will help other cities to think the same way. And I will copy it or at least get inspired by it. And that's why if I say, Sophie, I have to make this little publicity here. No? We are convening mayors and ministers next time in October in Mexico City. That's the discussion, mayors and ministers. Thank you very much.
Well, we'll provide some subject matter for them to discuss. Let me just take the question, though, to Indonesia and to the mayor of Surabaya. The question of greening the city, you know, there are obviously obstacles to doing this. There are other interests that do not have environment at the center of their concerns. How have you gone about overcoming those obstacles and those sorts of pockets of resistance to introducing your environmental policies in the city?
I explained before that in Surabaya used to be a very hot city. We have flood problems as well, but now the level of the temperature is getting cooler, 2 Celsius, and we no longer have flood problems. And the people very happy because they have public parks for free. And in several parks that we have, we also provide facilities for them, like a street vendor center, so that they can sell their products there. And by that, by improving the environment condition, we also improving the income condition of the people. So by that, when I start elected as the mayor, the economic growth is 5%, 5.2% in first year, and then it increased in my first year into 7.6%, and now we can actually move it to 7.6%.
And in terms of overcoming anybody who, or any groups or interests that have not been supportive of some of your environmental policies, can you talk a bit about how you have, as a politician, dealt with those sorts of resistances?
Actually, I'm not a politician. I would like to say that I'm a city development planner, a city planner. But I'm very close with the community that live in Surabaya. So all communities support me, and they also always support me to face the politics.
Thank you very much. I suspect we're coming back to the original point, which was that we have exceptional mayors in front of us. So it's going to be a little bit difficult to generalize from some of this experience when you have this sort of creative imagination and community support. Let's move on to possibly the last sort of element of this question of the urban age, and that's the question of inclusion. Cities have vast, most cities have big areas in which, you know, the other half of the population that doesn't participate or isn't able to benefit from all the wealth being created in those cities lives. How to make sure that cities don't become divided cities with increasing inequalities in which some parts are well integrated into the new economy and others are left behind. What's the Rotterdam experience on this?
Well, I try to say in my city that of course we have people with low income, and the lowest limit in the Netherlands for a family is 1,200 euros a month, so 1,200 euros a month. We consider it as an acceptable social minimum. But I dare to say that even people living on that social minimum are not necessarily poor. You have to think about that. Having less money does not mean that people are poor. I have been responsible for social affairs ministry for a couple of years, working on these issues of labor market issues. What do you think about an artist? Maybe with an IQ of 140. but does not produce enough for the market to buy his product, and he is forced by circumstances to live on the social minimum of 1,200 euros. Is he poor? No. This is a rich guy, rich of ideas. He's mentally rich, has so much to give to the nation and to the city. So don't consider people with little money necessarily poor. Yes, you maybe buy less things than the other can buy, but at the end of the day, you are not poor than the one who makes 1 million in a year. So I think it's really important. This is a very philosophical approach of the meaning of the word poor. And I have been myself living in Morocco 1 meal a day without shoes. Without shoes. Do you know how hot it is? 40, 45 degrees to walk outside, no shoes. What does that mean? So there is nobody on this world who can tell me what poverty is when it comes to having less things. But I never felt poor. I had the idea I was learning. I learned every day new things. I learned every day new words. I have another language. I'm Berber by origin. I learned the Arab language. It was to me a richness to learn another language that gives me an openness on the world. I understood the Arab literature. I understood the poems. And I had the opportunity to read the Quran. I was a rich man with little money. So I think it's really important to give that notion to all our students, for instance, that are going to learn at the university. All of them, they have little money. But are they poor? They are not. The question is, do we invest equally in our youth, for instance, to enable them to bridge a certain period of their life to get a job on their own talent? We don't have the same talents. The carpenter has another talent than a footballer. And someone who is playing football has another talent than the doctor. So and that's really, to me, the most important thing in my policy. We have in the city of Rotterdam, in certain areas, an additional 8 hours a week of education for children. That is almost a day longer of education for these kids, because we do really believe that we have to replace something that they don't give, that they get home.
It's put in place by the city of Rotterdam.
We pay for it. We pay for this additional curriculum, and if you ask you $1 and you don't have it, you can give it to me. You can never give something to me which you don't have. We are asking young mothers in our society to give intellectual luggage to these kids the mothers themselves lack. So we have to replace that. That's the philosophy behind providing additional education to bridge the gap. And by doing that, I really hope that also the migrants and the kids of the migrants at the end of the story will get equal access. When will that happen? To me, unfortunate, that will take 3 generations. And 3 generations is long, 1 generation 30 years, and migration history in the Netherlands is about 50 years. So we have another 40 years to go. And of course, there are exceptions like the mayor of Rotterdam. But that's not the issue. The issue is constantly investing in young people. I'm really happy with your remark about people to bring them in the position to work for their own money. I still remember a young girl in The Hague. She was visiting what we call a black school. That means a school, the entire population were immigrant kids. And she was doing well, and finally she ends up graduated twice at the university as a medical doctor. I know her very well, and she refused to have any financial support from the government in terms of a scholarship. Nothing. And now she is a doctor working in one of the regional hospitals in the Netherlands, and that girl is my sister. So I think it's nothing to do with color, nothing to do with being a migrant. It has to do with education, 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 and the willingness of governments to invest in education. That's the only way really to create equilibrium of chances in society by investing in people.
And of course, it depends on the country whether or not that is something that it can be the responsibility or is the responsibility of the city.
I think in the West, I cannot generalize, but in the West, and especially in the northern part of the countries, Belgium, Germany, the Netherlands, Scandinavian countries, there are a lot of chances. That's why when I visit neighborhoods and I meet young migrant kids, the age of 17, 18 years, and they ask me, Mayor, we would like to have a social house here in this neighborhood to spend our time in. And they became always angry. So why are you asking me a place where to kill your time? Why do you never ask me a library? Why are you always asking me a place where to spend your time for nothing? Ask me a library and then I will be your friend. That's just to force them to rethink their own position. It's about education, and it's not only the government that want to invest in them, they must also generate a kind of autonomous will to do that also.
Thanks very much. Let me ask about Prague, Adriana, because the geography of Prague is a little bit different to a lot of the cities where you have more of a kind of ghetto-like situation. The French banlieue are famous in that respect. How do you go about making sure that there is a sort of both an inclusive, socially inclusive policy in Prague, but also that the geography of exclusion isn't marked in the landscape?
Well, I have to admit that I'm living in a rich city and a very flat city in terms of inclusion and exclusion. And there are no such places, for example, ghettos as such, that you maybe might know from other Western countries. I'm very grateful and happy about that. However, there are, of course, some deficits in our social policy, but that can be overcome. And in Prague, in Czech Republic, there are approximately 75,000 civil associations. Out of them, 10,000 are active in social care. So there is a reasonable social cohesion in Czech Republic, in Prague as well. What we don't have, and somehow our predecessor didn't succeed in it. They forgot that children are born and they need kindergartens. And also they forgot that people are aging and they need hospices and daily care. And this is something which is going to be a growing challenge for us in Prague to put more attention on this issue, especially on aging population. And of course, in some areas also the kindergartens and schools. We have 200 schools, secondary schools who we are supporting, and this is quite a reasonable sum of money. We are putting it together with the Ministry of Education, of course. But as the population is developing, we are facing these challenges, as I mentioned, especially for the aging population, which is for us at the moment something to solve. The second thing is homeless people. We are not very good in it to tackle this problem, I admit it, but this is also something we have to think about. And I couldn't figure out quite well how to solve this. It's not a problem; it's a challenge. Because I'm not talking about problems, not because I was studied in the States, but that's why, because a problem, whenever it's a really problem, I have different criteria for a really problem.
Thanks very much. We're going to, I'm going to open the hall to questions in a moment, the room to questions, but I just wanted to come back while you're formulating your question to just follow up one thing with the Mayor of Rotterdam, and that's going back to your initial remarks that you made about being a sort of mini United Nations and having to act as a sort of peacemaker, because one element of what you're describing is keeping the peace in a way, and how is it, besides the fact that you're so self-evidently a role model in your own background, how is it possible to make sure that a lot of the tensions that do exist among different ethnic groups, different faiths in Western Europe and beyond don't become a source of real difficulty in managing cities?
Simply don't hide them. Don't hide them. Don't hide them. Just put them on the table. With the man with whom you have a different opinion, you need to talk. With a friend, you drink a cup of coffee, and that's the difference. So after Paris, together with my colleague, the mayor of Amsterdam, we initiated nationwide, announced by me on the television program, mass demonstrations in the Netherlands to express our anger and to say this is not the world we're expecting in the West. We're not expecting this kind of intolerance. We're not expecting people that do not accept the notion of freedom to go to Yemen to learn how to use a Kalashnikov and to come back and to use it against the freedom in Europe. I'm an immigrant. I went to the Netherlands in '76 on the age of 15. And one of the reasons to come to Europe was a search for freedom. I cannot imagine that someone who is born in freedom is explicitly making a choice to be not free and to go to ISIL and to be there supporting the unfree world. So to me, that was the reason to have a big mass manifestation in Rotterdam. And after that, to hold 8 big, major, maybe double this audience neighborhood meetings, just to invite citizens to come and say, talk with me. I said very strong words to one these people, and if I'm wrong, come, and that's the Dutch expression, come and wash my ears if I am wrong. Come and let's talk. And we had really meetings of sometimes 3 hours in the evening, and people expressed themselves, and we created really a notion of what I call a social resilient city. That makes, I think, that not always all people in the city agree with what I said, because my remark was very, very strong, and was the mayor of London who translated my remark, if you don't like freedom, fuck off. I never should say fuck off. The Dutch word is, if you don't like it, pack your luggage and leave. And I think that is a strong statement. And I used it really in trusting that it was very close to my citizens. Because that is the feeling the majority of people is feeling after what happened. So it's my approach to create what I call a we community. And I always make this symbol, a we community. But if someone, by belief or what other mean, construct his own truth and knows for sure he is not willing to make with me the we community, and it is his desire to go to his Rome, let's say Raqqa in Syria, that is his Rome, this ideal place to live. Why should they say, stay with me, let's go to make a we community? I should say, you don't like it, you don't like us, you don't like our way of living under the freedoms of our constitution, you have also the choice not to be with us. There are airplanes leaving the Netherlands every minute to go whatever you want in the world, and maybe is Afghanistan a better place to be, maybe is Southern Sudan a better place to be, maybe there is an island in the ocean where nobody lives, where you can create your own truth. I mean, this is really, to me, a very strong statement. Be with us, create a we community. There is a role for you, and help us, but if you don't like it, you may also leave.
Thank you very much indeed. I think I'm right in remembering that the Mayor of London also at that point called you his hero for saying such things, which I guess were very brave at the time and are probably still now. Let's open the floor to questions, and I will also take some that have come in digitally. Gentleman in the 4th row.
Henry Rees of the NGO, French NGO, Énergie Franco-Allemande. We are more in the energy sector, but I was amazed all the interventions were interesting, but especially by Mayor from Surabaya. And reflecting a bit to what the Mayor of Rotterdam said, I've been, I think, the last 2 weeks in discussions about problems with Islam in Europe, in Brussels, in Hamburg, on the weekend in France, and so on. So what apparently in Surabaya, I take that you're probably Muslim, you do better that we here in Europe have got problems with. I hope it's not a too political or religious question, but it sort of, I think it's a question to be asked. You're doing something better which we in the West have got a problem with. At least that's my feeling.
Huge question. I'm going to have to ask for a very short answer, but have a go.
So, a few years ago, a few months ago, there are Air Asia accident in Surabaya that we lost around 80% of the victims are Surabaya citizens. And from those 80% victims, 99% actually from Chinese and not a Muslim. I wait by myself every day in the crisis center for 3 months. There are a lot of people that are angry with me. Why the mayor have to be present by herself in the crisis center and for the Chinese victims, not for the Muslim? And my answer was, all of the Surabaya citizens are my responsibility. And one of my activity that I regularly did 3 times a year, because we have several tribes in Surabaya from all around Indonesia. We have all of the national religion in Indonesia, and they participate in that festival. And in Surabaya is one of the safest city in Indonesia. So we don't have any demonstration. We don't have any conflict between religion. We also don't have any conflict between tribes or ethnics. Because that is why one of my reasons to have the e-government system and why the city should be clean and free from flood, because the one that has money, the citizen that has money, will improve their participation, and we can use that to support the underprivileged people by giving a free service for health and education sector, and we also improve their economic condition. And every year we also have this program where the people who are very wealthy, and they give support to people who works in the street to clean the road, who clean the drainage and fix the street lamp, and they give it directly in the city hall.
Thank you very much. Let's take another question from the floor, if there is one. Otherwise, I'm going to pass to the tablet. Gentleman in the back there. Middle.
To the mayor of Rotterdam, do you really think that even though the person who fight freedom shouldn't stay in Rotterdam, do you really think that it's a good option for them to join jihad, and do you really think that letting them do that is a good thing for freedom?
Let me try to explain to you that I'm a jihadist. That those guys who go into fight there are not jihadists, they are criminals. That is, I think, the word we should use. Jihad is a wonderful name to be used for these guys. I'm doing the good thing for my city from 7 o'clock in the morning till 12 o'clock in the evening. That's the real meaning of jihad. These are criminals. I know too much about the Islam to say that these people are jihadists. The first 11 Muslims ever went to Habasha, which is Ethiopia nowadays, to seek refuge with a Christian king. And there are wonderful movies made about that. So the first Muslims were protected by the Christians. Can you imagine that Muslim youth from Europe are going to Syria to help to kill the latest Christians in Syria and Iraq? Is that the way to say thank you? That's it. This is what drives me to say what I say. Not only because I'm mayor and have to take care of peace in my city, but I'm well involved and I know what we are talking about. These guys have constructed their own truth based on ideology. Has nothing to do with racism, nothing to do with discrimination, lack of opportunities. These guys, they know what's about. They have their own ideology. They construct their own truth. And they do what they do based on their own truth. They kill everyone who is not thinking or believing what they think or what they believe. That's all about. And I think if I have traced two of them in my city, and I know from intelligence services, and I can know that because I'm responsible for the police and the law enforcement in my city, maybe different to other cities, but I can know that. If I know that, do you really think that I didn't go? No, if they are planned for terrorism, we capture them because we are forced to do that by national law and we are forced to do that by international agreements. I will never let them go. But what do you think about a man and a woman 50 years old, 2 kids, and they have been rethinking the all present on earth and say, Raqqa in Syria, that is to me Rome. That is what I want to be. They have nothing to do with terrorism. What kind of instruments do I have to say to them, you are not going? They are free to go. If I am really pleading for freedom, then I must be consequent and say, if I don't have any charges against them, go.
Thank you. I'm going to ask one of the questions from the tablet, and that's very quickly. We're really going to, we're running out of time, but I think I might put this to Rolf. It's about how can smart cities be sustainable if they cause unemployment? It's a good question. Is there a short and snappy answer to that one? And if not, I'll read you the next one.
It's a very interesting choice that you give me. No. Can they be sustainable when they cause unemployment? I think the sequence would not occur to me as any link. Smart, city, and unemployment may have many, many connotations and many linkages, but not to say that they weigh on the sustainability. And why not? I'd say exactly the other way around. You see, we looked here and you raised the question about inclusion. Is the city a good place for it? I think we should be really taking the time, not today, but when we think about it, what type of inclusion we mean. We heard the inclusion of diversity. We could think about the inclusion in terms of income or exclusion. We could think in terms of the inclusion by age. You spoke about this, how much that means today in some of the cities, not only in Europe, also in places like Japan in particular. So the answer is not that there is a policy to say we do not deal with inclusion, but I have to say that in our work that we do, yes, it could well be that cities are also the places of large inequality in incomes. But it nevertheless means that there is an opportunity for people to work. So therefore, I think yes and no, I would say it's a little too simplified, but that there are very positive linkages for sure.
Thank you. Have we got an answer to our poll, incidentally? Has anyone got the answer to that? We asked earlier whether smart cities were the solution for us for the future of city administration, but I don't know if we've got the answer. It'll be available later. We've run out of time, I'm afraid. I'm going to ask each of our panelists for one word, just one word to conclude about what the future of the cities is. We've heard a huge number of of both positive and challenging aspects of city administration. Very inspiring presentations and answers from all of the panelists and the mayors included. Final chance to say something. What we've got an answer to the poll first, which is that 78% think that the smart cities are the way of the future. That's perhaps not very surprising, but thank you for taking part in that. What, in one word, what are cities about for the what is the future of the city all about? One word.
To be home for the people.
Adriana.
Well, I wanted to say what my imagination of inclusion is, but okay, if I have to say it in one word, is, well, friendly communication.
From Rotterdam.
People.
Rolf?
Laboratories for solutions.
Excellent. Well, I think they've summed it up for me. Thank you so much to all the panelists. That was really fabulous. And many thanks to you for taking part.